She said it would be nothing, just one night. But one night changed everything I thought I knew about us. It started on a warm Friday evening, the kind where the air holds the quiet promise of something unexpected. He noticed her from across the softly lit room, her presence both commanding and gentle, a 40-year-old American Caucasian woman with long black hair, lightly tanned skin, and dark brown eyes that hinted at a life fully lived. There was an elegance in her posture, a graceful confidence that drew him in without a word. He, a 22-year-old man with an observant mind and a heart prone to overthinking, felt a pull he could neither explain nor resist. They had met before, casually, in fleeting conversations, but tonight was different. The room smelled faintly of vanilla and polished wood, and the soft hum of a jazz playlist made every movement feel slower, more deliberate. She approached with a subtle smile, a curve of her lips that suggested warmth, but also a hint of mischief. Their eyes locked, and for the first time, he noticed the small details. The way her fingers lightly brushed the rim of her wine glass, the soft laugh lines at the corners of her eyes, and the faint perfume that lingered like a whisper of intimacy. Their conversation began cautiously, topics ranging from mundane to personal, each sentence carrying the unspoken weight of curiosity and attraction. When she laughed, it was soft and genuine, and he felt an unusual calm, as if the world outside had shrunk to the space between them. She rested her hand briefly on his forearm, a fleeting contact that sent a current through him, and he realized how much he had been craving this closeness. As the evening unfolded, there was a subtle shift, a sense of inevitability. She leaned in slightly, her voice dropping just enough to create an intimacy that was impossible to ignore. He noticed how her dark brown eyes studied him carefully, revealing a vulnerability beneath her composed exterior. The room seemed smaller, warmer, almost as if it existed solely for this moment. And then she said it, just one night. Her words were casual, yet they hit him with the force of clarity. In that instant, he understood that this night was dangerous, irresistible, and transformative. It was a line drawn in invisible ink, a choice dangling between desire and consequence. He felt a tightening in his chest, a mixture of anticipation and dread, knowing that agreeing could mean losing something he hadn't even fully grasped yet, himself, or her, or the delicate balance they had maintained. He watched her, graceful and self-assured, and felt the strange combination of awe and fear. Her hand brushed against his again, lighter this time, more insistent, and the warmth lingered longer than it should have. It was a moment pregnant with possibilities, the kind that stays with you, echoing in your thoughts long after the night ends. Every heartbeat, every glance, every breath was charged with a tension that was more emotional than physical, a slow burn that neither of them wanted to name, but both sensed profoundly. By the end of that first part of the night, the emotional landscape was set. Temptation, hesitation, and an unspoken promise of something that could not remain as simple as she had claimed. The night deepened, but the room felt suspended in warmth and quiet. He couldn't stop noticing the subtle grace of her movements. A 40-year-old American Latino woman with long black hair, lightly tanned skin, dark brown eyes, and a curvy figure that moved like poetry. Every small gesture spoke of confidence tempered with vulnerability. He found himself laughing at things he didn't expect, drawn into a rhythm of conversation that felt effortless yet charged with something unspoken. When she leaned closer to reach for a glass, her fingers brushed his again, this time lingering a fraction longer, and a spark traveled along his arm. The small thrill of that contact was intoxicating. Their eyes met, and for a moment, words were unnecessary. He could sense her hesitation beneath her composed exterior, the same kind of restraint he felt clawing at his chest. It wasn't just attraction. It was an acknowledgement that the night was fragile, that what they were teetering on was delicate, dangerous, yet irresistible. She laughed softly at a joke, but the sound was tinged with something else, an unspoken acknowledgement of the tension building between them. He noticed the slight smile lines around her eyes, The way her fingers idly played with the hem of her dress, a subtle invitation, or perhaps just a nervous habit. His heartbeat quickened, but he reminded himself of the consequences that might come from letting desire take the lead. The room felt smaller, closer, as if the universe had shrunk to the space between them. He was aware of every detail. The scent of her perfume mingling with the warm air, the soft brush of her hair as she moved, the curve of her lips when she paused mid-sentence to look at him. When she rested her hand lightly on his shoulder while laughing, he felt the steadiness of her touch, the quiet reassurance mingled with an electric thrill. He realized that every moment of proximity was layering a tension that neither of them could ignore, a slow burn that made the night feel eternal. By the end of the evening, the temptation had grown into a tangible pull. Each laugh, glance, and fleeting touch was a thread in a web he didn't want to escape. Yet, beneath the thrill, there was a quiet fear, the recognition that this night, just one night, could irrevocably change the way he felt about her, about himself, and about what he was willing to risk for desire. The night had a rhythm, but he felt the tug of hesitation creeping in. Her eyes, dark and reflective, revealed a vulnerability she rarely allowed others to see. A 40-year-old American Caucasian woman with long black hair, soft laugh lines, and an elegant posture, she was both magnetic and quietly fragile in these private moments. He noticed how she shifted slightly when she thought no one was watching, the way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear or traced patterns on her wine glass absent-mindedly. These small, human gestures made her approachable yet intensely desirable. He wanted to reach out, but the weight of the moment, age difference, unspoken consequences, kept him restrained. When their hands brushed accidentally while passing a plate of food, the contact lingered, and he felt a rush of warmth and panic all at once. Their eyes met, holding a silent conversation, desire, hesitation, curiosity, and fear. He realized that the connection they were building was more than physical. It was emotional, delicate, and complex. She shared a small story from her past, her voice soft and intimate, revealing a side of herself he hadn't known. Her vulnerability made him ache to comfort her, to be close, yet he hesitated, aware that moving too fast could shatter the fragile balance. Every smile, every glance, every gentle laugh was a thread weaving them closer, yet tethered by caution. The tension between them was tangible. When she leaned in slightly, as if to whisper something, the warmth of her body brushed his, and his chest tightened. He wanted to pull her closer, to linger in the quiet intimacy, but restraint held him back. By the end of the evening, they were caught in a liminal space, on the edge of something forbidden yet compelling. The night had shifted from casual temptation to profound emotional intimacy, and both knew the choice lay in whether they would step across that invisible line as the clock edged past midnight. The room felt warmer, brighter, and smaller, the world outside irrelevant. He was acutely aware of her presence. 40-year-old American Latina woman, long black hair cascading over her shoulders, subtly tanned skin, graceful curves, and dark brown eyes that held his attention effortlessly. She reached out to steady him after a stumble over the carpet, her hand brushing against his chest, and he felt the quiet force of connection. Every heartbeat, every pulse of warmth was magnified. He noticed the softness of her skin, the reassuring steadiness of her fingers, and the subtle scent of vanilla mingling with her perfume. They sat closer than before, knees almost touching, the proximity both electric and comforting. A shared laugh sent a ripple of warmth through him, and their shoulders brushed accidentally, sending a thrill he couldn't ignore. He noticed how she subtly leaned in when she spoke, her voice soft and intimate, drawing him into her world. She placed her hand lightly on his arm, a gesture of reassurance and curiosity. The contact lingered, intentional yet gentle, and he felt both desire and fear coexisting in equal measure. They exchanged glances that spoke volumes, a shared understanding that the night was moving beyond casual boundaries. Even in the quiet moments, their tension was palpable. Every shift of weight, every flicker of expression was charged with meaning. He realized that the emotional intimacy they were developing was as intoxicating as any physical connection could be. By the end of this part, the night had moved past the point of casual temptation into the territory of emotional vulnerability and subtle physical intimacy. Both were acutely aware that one more step could transform everything. The room seemed to hold its breath as he found himself unable to look away from her eyes. Her vulnerability was visible, her elegant composure tempered with hesitance. He noticed her hands resting lightly on the table, the curve of her fingers, the warmth she radiated even in silence. She spoke softly about fears, regrets, and fleeting joys, revealing an emotional side hidden beneath her confident exterior. He listened, mesmerized, wanting to offer comfort, to close the distance. The 40-year-old American Caucasian woman exuded a maturity and wisdom that drew him in, but also a subtle fragility that made his chest ache. When she reached out and brushed her fingers against his hand, the contact lingered long enough to speak volumes. They shared a quiet moment of understanding, where words were unnecessary and emotional intimacy took precedence. The confession of vulnerability was intoxicating, deepening the bond between them. The emotional stakes had risen, and he understood that the connection was no longer a fleeting night. It was becoming something profoundly personal. The night had reached a crescendo. Their closeness was undeniable, every glance, touch, and laugh laden with unspoken desire. She leaned in while speaking, her breath warm against his ear, her hand resting lightly on his forearm. The 40-year-old American Latina woman radiated confidence and allure, her long black hair brushing her shoulder as she shifted. He felt torn between restraint and surrender, every instinct urging him forward while every thought reminded him of the consequences. They shared a fleeting smile, the kind that carries entire conversations in a heartbeat, and the tension became almost unbearable. The emotional intimacy intertwined with the subtle physical closeness, creating a slow-burning moment where every second was charged. Their world had shrunk to the space between them, where desire, hesitation, and vulnerability collided. Morning light filtered through the curtains, illuminating the room and casting a soft glow over both of them. He watched her quietly, her long black hair catching the light, her lightly tanned skin radiant, and the quiet confidence she exuded softened by vulnerability. The night had changed everything. They had shared laughs, touches, and confessions, but the one night had left a lasting mark. They sat close, shoulders brushing, exchanging glances that were no longer casual but intimate and knowing. While the night had ended, the emotional connection remained. They both understood that what had begun as a fleeting encounter had transformed into a profound, slow-burning bond, one that could not be easily ignored or forgotten. The story ended with a warm, emotionally satisfying closure. The tension had resolved into understanding, affection, and a mutual acknowledgement of desire tempered with respect.